Chambers today in Taupo. Welcome to councillors, members of the public, press, staff, and all those out there on live stream. Correct, we're on live, so good afternoon everyone. Councillor Kingy, would it be possible if you'd be able to give us a blessing for the day, please? Thank you, Councillor Kingy. Thank you very much, Councillor Kingy, truly appreciate it. Number one is apologies. I don't think we have any. We've got a full house. Number two, any conflicts of interest pertaining to the items today? No, there being none. We'll go to item number 3, which is confirmation of minutes of the ordinary council meeting on the 28th of July, 2020. Do we have any items for clarification or any commentary from those minutes? No? Okay, could I have a mover? Thank you. Councillor Kingy, seconded by Councillor Leonard. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. 4.1 is the minutes from the Lake Taupo Protection Project Joint Committee, which was held on the 19th of June. Any points of clarification of those minutes or matters arising? No, straightforward. If I could have a mover, thanks, Councillor Williamson, seconded by Councillor Leonard. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. 4.2, consideration of the Kinloch Representative Group recommendation to Council, extension of the proposal of the Kinloch Community Hall licence to occupy. Who have we got there? Councillor Guy, thank you, sorry.
Thank you. Just for a point of clarification, I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a background. The licence to occupy was first issued in March 2019, and the kindergartens was to open on the 1st of May. However, some resource consent issues were put forward, and the kindergarten didn't actually open until later in October. The licence to occupy has been requested to continue for another 12 months. In October last year, the kindergarten opened with 3 children. It now has 20, and the recommendation is that we now allow the licence to occupy for 25 children. I would strongly recommend that this go through, please. It's very much a focus for the Kinloch community and the families, and it's been an absolute Godsaver for a lot of those families during these harsh times. So I would certainly recommend that the council adopts the representative group's recommendation as per the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Very clear and concise, and I presume you're happy to move that, unless there's any questions of Councillor Guy regarding that request.
Mr. Chairman, just a big one. I'm fully in favour of the resolution. Is the hall fit for purpose, i.e. does it fit the criteria to run a kindergarten? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boddy.
Yes, at the moment it does. They're obviously, as they will be at their limit with 25 children, but one of the things that the Kinloch Community Group are looking at the moment, or the representative group, is possibly the need for a larger facility, and whether or not that is something that is facilitated by the Education Department is on the next case the Kinloch agenda. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Councillor Guy and Boddy. So there's a recommendation that Councillor Guy's moved. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Williamson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. 4.3, e-scooter proposal. We have Dennis in front of us, and I acknowledge Mr. David down there in the back, and I've allowed David to say if there's any questions of David during the item. He's available there. Good to see you, David. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll take the item as read. I've just got a couple of comments to make in relation to the item. Just point out that originally the trial was for 8-month period. That trial ended in the middle of COVID, so we've extended it to take into that account. So the trial period ends in the middle of September. At the end of level 2, I think it was, we allowed the glide to remove the geofencing and not to take them in at night as a trial to see how that went. And to date we haven't had any complaints about that, those changes. Yeah, take any questions.
Thanks very much, Dennis. Any questions of Dennis? Councillor Westerman.
Is the number of scooters at 100 going to remain at 100?
That's our intention, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions of Dennis? No? Okay. There was a recommendation there that we approve the issuing of the permit to Glide Limited, operation for 12 months for right of renewal for 12. And the chief signs the documents here. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Mack, seconded by Councillor Westman. All those in favour, please say aye. It's against, carried. Thanks very much, Dennis. Thank you, David. 4.4, proposal to lease part of Rangatira Point Block. And we have Mr. John Ridd. Afternoon, John.
Thank you. Before I hand over to Councillors Westerman and Taylor, there's a couple of things to raise. I'll take the item as read as. It was pointed out that the map on page 2 has a red line on it. It's more to do with the fact that I have moved from plus 1.5 to 2 my glasses, so we just need to get some more accuracy, and thanks for picking it out, Chris.
Wait till you get to 2.75 then,
yeah.
Really.
So once we finalise the lease, which is the purpose of this, we'll get that real detail. One thing to consider, this would probably be only one of 2 of these arrangements. We have a similar arrangement at Acacia Bay for a boat trailer park, but generally, and this is done for other reasons, of course, but I just wanted to highlight that that's one of the things to consider on this item. I'll hand over to 2/3 of the working group, if that's okay, if you would like to say anything, councillors, on as you led the negotiations along with Janice Wall.
Well, thank you, John. Just before, is there any questions of John regarding the photograph and all that? Pretty straightforward. Yep. Okay. Thanks very much, John. Did you want to add anything, guys? It's all in the document here.
Just,
you're most welcome to.
oh, from a 1/3 perspective. I just wonder if we could just, in the executive summary, include that we also have our Māori representative who was involved, Ms. Wall.
Okay.
Was involved in that subgroup of the Taupo Reserves and Roading Committee. The only comment I'd make is this is an iconic piece of real estate which has been used by generations in Taupo and visitors, and I'd really encourage councillors to approve the recommendation. There is goodwill on behalf of the Trust, and we've put a little bit of work in the meantime, and I think it would be an asset to the community to keep it the way it is. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Westerman.
There might be a couple of little tweaks that we'd like to do, because we do want to talk about toilet facilities on the site, which there isn't currently, and we'll come back to the council regarding that once we get through this formality and we know whether we're going to get the go ahead. And again, I would certainly encourage you to vote for this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Westman, and certainly I'll echo those words as Councillor Taylor rightly put it. It's an iconic piece of property and high amenity value to this district, and to be able to retain access to that is just fantastic. So thank you to the goodwill of the owners and the goodwill of the council. Do you want me to turn it on? Yeah. Sorry. Okay. You want me to repeat all that? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other commentary from councillors? No? And thanks to that sub-working group on that. All right, do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Westman. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, John. 4.5, appointment of commissioners, delegation of proposed land use consent for a zip line, hearing and decision. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So I'll take the report there as read. I'm happy to take any questions though on that.
Thanks, Heather. Okay, right. Any questions, councillors? Right, obviously the commissioners are well versed in this sort of, well, not activity, but obviously these types of hearings.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So I mean, I can tell you a little bit. We've chosen, tried to get a spectrum of experience. Two of the commissioners on there, Kim Hardy and Brad Coombs, have been on recent hearings for us. So both Kim and Brad did one last year for Taupo Bay, and Brad also was the expert witness for us for the hotel. Gina Sweetman is new to our hearings panels. All three of them have the commissioner chairperson qualification, so it's a experienced group, and within that both Gina and Kim have a planning background, whereas Brad has the landscape background, and Gina in particular with her experience on multi-planning matters is taking the lead there. Probably should also tell you that we have set down the hearing date pending your approval today, and that will be, if you want to put that in your diaries, for the 30th of September and the 1st of October. But more information will come out to you.
Good. And you actually appoint the chairperson at this stage, do you? This recommendation, yeah, this recommendation,
yes,
yeah.
So
yeah.
all three of them
So
have
they
that
don't-
qualification, but I'd like to appoint Gina as the
Okay,
chairperson.
we're able to do that now. Yeah, cool. All right, thanks so much, Eva. Right, any other commentary? I suppose it's rather exciting to see an application come through like this in these times. So, and of course, we've been working, the team's been working with these people for quite some time. So to see it come to a hearing, well done to all concerned. Says Rick. Happy to move by Councillor Rankin, seconded by Councillor Park. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thanks, Eva. Right, 4.6. Receipt of unaudited financials for the year ended June 2020 and the Treasury Management Report for June 2020. Mr Alan Menhenant. Good afternoon, Alan.
Thank you, through the Chair. It's been quite a challenge to produce these. We're still working on the year-end accounts, dealing with audit under level 2. A lot of it's done remote, etc. These are unaudited, but for the purposes of keeping councillors informed of where we are as far as the year end is concerned, that's why we've produced these. It's not a perfect world, and when you've got a sharp mind like Councillor Boddy, he was able to pick up 2 or 3 errors that we've made. I just wondered whether in his second life he should be an accountant, but we'll leave it at that. But as far as the at council level, you can see that our results are in line with what we were forecasting over the last few months. So it's pretty much in line with budget. And also our debt and net cash position is very much where we expect it to be. If we look at the different movements, we can see that there's things that you don't actually budget for. If you take, for example, the difference in revaluation of our forests, something that's completely out of our control, it's just the way the world market moves. There's a number of movements as far as the unrealised position, and there'll be even more in the final draft accounts. But as far as from a rating perspective, what we actually rate for, our performance has ended up pretty much in line with what we expected. So through the different operating areas, there haven't been too much change. One of the bits that was pointed out to us was in the transport capital expenditure, where we showed a full-year budget of 13.2. It was actually only 10.6 as per what council body picked up. And for some strange reason, the Horomatangi car park had been added into the capex, and the other one was on the investments. The capital expenditure there was understated. It should have been 4.2 because the car park should have been showing in there as capital expenditure. But they were just minor things that we're working on as we head towards the final of those financials. If we look at the investment report, it's a challenge when the OCR is only 0.25 and we were budgeting for reasonable investment returns. I suppose on reflection, where you hear the talk about getting into maybe a negative interest rate scenario, at 0.25 we're actually getting deposits of about 1.5%. So if it went to minus 0.25, we'd probably end up about 1% as far as a TD rate. So none of us are going to get rich on that. But if we look at the yields that are actually achieved through the general fund and the TL, the actual return, that's the cash-based return, we managed to get 3.99%, which is just under 4, and taking into account the movements in investment portfolios pulls it back to about 1.5. But it's a challenge. When we did this budget a year or so ago, we were budgeting for a 3% return and we thought we were being conservative. Well, who would have guessed that the interest rates are going to be where they are? But we've ended up the year with about 61 million in the TL fund, and the total cash position is looking pretty strong going forward. So no surprises, fortunately, but who's to tell what's going to happen going forward.
Thanks very much, Alan. All right, any questions of Alan? Councillor Williamson.
Through there. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, thanks, Alan. You know, I've always been a supporter of you, the way you invest funds, you know, particularly in the equity market. I know it's still challenging times. But I just see on page, on with your investments, with the Lion share portfolio has been impacted, realising a loss of 565. Are they shares being sold, or is it unrealised loss?
It's unrealised.
Yes, it says
yeah. There's a probably as much in realised gains in the year, but yeah, that's just the way the market moves, and we don't have any reason to crystallise losses. We'll just wait till the market turns around on certain shares. You know,
Oh yeah, I appreciate that. I just waits to read from it, realising with a loss that being 565 being lost actually by selling.
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Manhattan? No. All good. Thanks. Thanks very much, Alan. Okay, there's a recommendation there that we received the unaudited for June. Yes, so last month of the year, isn't it? Okay. Someone move that. Thanks, Councillor Body. Seconded by Councillor Rankin. All those in favour, please say aye. It's against. It's carried. Thanks, Alan. 4.7, Three Waters reform. Decision to participate in the tranche 1. Good afternoon,
Cool. So
Kevin and Tanya.
through the chair, I'll just start off before Tanya gets into the detail if she wants to expand on anything in the paper. But this is the workshop that we had last week. It was well attended and lots of good questions in through that, and it's just really a follow up for that work. Just one thing is the MOU. If we get this signed and it goes through, there is another month to prepare all of the information ready for how we spend this money. And we'd like to try and get this all in as one application so we can get started as early as possible.
Thanks, Kevin. Tanya, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. Good afternoon, councillors. As Kevin said, we had a workshop on this last week. There's quite a few recommendations in there that we're asking, but essentially the government's put forward it's been doing quite a bit of work around Three Waters reforms, and it's set up 3 different tranches. So this is agreeing to sign the MOU to participate in the first tranche. The MOU is non-binding, so by signing this MOU it doesn't mean that we have to participate in tranches 2 or 3. But by signing the MOU it does allow us to access the stimulus funding of up to just over 8 million. And we're also seeking to nominate the Chief Executive as the primary contact for communication, and for the discussions around the regional funding and how that be allocated across the region. So are there any questions?
Thanks, Tanya.
Just
Councillor Body.
through, Mr. Chairman. What does trance mean? The best I could go is like in a trance. What's it actually mean?
Stage.
Stage.
Stage. Why don't we just say stage?
Yes.
Like bow wave.
It is a project management term that is
Pay
well
the big
used.
money for planning term. Tanya, why is it called trance?
It's the terminology that the government's using, so we're just following it through for consistency.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, any other questions? Councillor Mack.
So just for clarification, where it says on the first option, where it may be perceived that the council's already made a predetermined decision to opt in without public consultation, at which point should there be public consultation?
So it'll depend on what comes out of the other 2 tranches or stages. The details of what's going to happen in those stages are still quite, there's not a lot of detail around them yet, but certainly as those detail in those stages comes out, then we we'll need to, if we decide to opt into either 2 or 3, depending on what those decision points are, then we will have to consult with our community at some stage along that journey.
Okay, so this is just a perception.
So the disadvantage on that option was just around the perception that by opting into this we've already made a decision, but it's just a perception thing.
There's a Simpson Gresson have done a legal opinion on it, which has said that you don't need to consult as part of this, so it's simply perception. I guess if you were consulting, all you'd be consulting on to the community is, do you want us to take $8.3 million worth of free money? And that's not something that we need to consult on, because we know what the answer would be.
Through the chair.
Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, thank you. I think Tanya and Gareth have probably covered a lot, but Councillor Mack made a very good point. When you read through the report, sometimes it raises more questions and answers. You go through all the sections about through and consultation, post-entry, but I think you answered that with the MOU, post-entry to the MOU, so I think that sort of does make it a bit clearer, but yeah, that's a good point, Councillor Mack.
Cool. Thank you very much, Councillor Williamson. Okay, any other question of Tanya or Kevin? Straightforward there. There's a recommendation there. 1 through till 7, which is up there. Thanks, Shani. All right, I have a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Williamson, seconded by Councillor Guy. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thanks very much. You're still there, are you, Tony, for the next one?
I am.
4.8, which is the 5 Mile Bay water funding consultation document.
So what this is, so we had a workshop on this in June. So what this is when the long-term plan was prepared, the funding was allocated in year 3 of the long-term plan for a pipeline to be put through 5 Mile Bay, which would enable that community to receive reticulated drinking water. At the time, a decision wasn't made about how that project was going to be funded. So we need to go out and consult with our community about how that should be funded. So there is a consultation document which is designed to go out there and seek the views of our community on terms how we think it should be funded.
Okay, thanks, Tanya. You're obviously joined by Engineer Tom Sundell. Good to see you, Tom. Have you got anything to add to this? Pretty straightforward. We're going down to ask the people of 5 Mile Bay and beyond.
Yeah, so we're
Yep.
putting together a consultation communications plan at the moment, but we'll be looking to consult over the period of mid September to mid August. Yeah. October.
So it's a 4-year consultation.
Sometimes it feels like it, doesn't it? So 4 weeks. Yeah.
4 weeks.
So it'll be open for 4 weeks.
All right. Yep. Cool.
And yeah.
All right. Thanks. Any questions, Tanya? Yep. Councillor Body.
Regards to the resolution we've passed before, is there a tie-up between the two?
No, so they're completely separate.
Nothing, and that's to include the funding. It's not going to, part of the 8.3 is not going to be, can be partly funded for this, or what?
No, so the funding for this
Thank you.
project's already been prepared under the long-term plan. So yeah, they're completely separate.
So through the chair, just to answer that, you are not allowed to utilise it for money that can get allocated to some other project.
All right. Thank you very much, Tanya and Tom. Good to see you. And it's been moved by Councillor Kingy. Correct. And seconded by Councillor Leonard.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried.
Thank you.
Right. 4.9, tender contract for the installation of the new water mains in Tauhara Ridge and 5 Mile Bay. Dennis and Tom. Or Tom, are you leading this one?
Yes,
Thank you.
I'll speak up this time.
Okay. Good one. Thanks, Tom.
So yeah, the purpose of this paper is to award the contract for the installation of water mains in Tauhara Ridge and the 5 Mile Bay community. So we've been out to tender for this. Had a very competitive tender process, which was fantastic. Our first big tender since sort of the COVID has been around. So we had 11 tenderers, which is the biggest I've ever seen for one of our water main projects. 9 were got through the initial stage, and effectively we evaluated based on our weighted attributes process, so assessing quality of the tenderers as well as their ultimate price. And the winning tenderer was that of Chemic Civil, with a price of about 1.25 million. Unfortunately, we're a little bit over the budgeted value for the 2 projects, so they're 2 separate LTP projects which feed into this. So we're also requesting additional unbudgeted expenditure of $185,000 to enable completion of the project. I would say my comment around the reason we've sort of gone over a little bit on the value is that as I suppose we've sort of developed our designs, which were initially done 3 years ago for the LTP, things have moved a little bit. Our growth sort of in the area has altered a little bit, and as we've got through that detailed design, there's probably been little additions of scope to cater for that. So hence a little bit of price increase. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Question, Councillor Westerman.
I've got to say I was a little confused about the 2 projects, and it's like the 5 Mile Bay one is a little way off because you've got all your public contribution submissions going on, but your Tauhara Ridge one's sort of a little bit more set in concrete, and it sort of seemed confusing to me why they were together and not separate.
Yep, so they're put together because they're in sort of similar areas. The designs were ready to go. We're probably a little bit behind, I would say, on the consultation preparation for 5 Mile Bay, but they are tendered as one project, so we gain efficiencies from project management, contract management, as well as we make it more attractive for the contractors out there. But it is written quite clearly into our contract documents that the time frame of delivery for 5 Mile Bay with the contractors, so they're aware they need to wait, and their pricing sort of reflects that.
So let's start on the Tauhara Ridge project first.
That's right, yep.
Correct. So if 5 Mile Bay falls over,
yeah, that will be pulled. So it's a separable portion that can fall out of that contract with them.
okay. you for that. Sorry, Dennis, and then Kathy.
Yeah, if I'd just like to add there with, there's a cost to tender for projects. So the more projects you have to put up, especially if we want to use weighted attributes, the tender is, that costs money. It could be anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 to put together a tender. So by bundling, not only do we get efficiencies by going out to the market, but it also helps to reduce the tenderer's costs and get more people interested.
Thanks, Dennis. Councillor Guy.
I understand through the tendering process that Chemex weren't actually the cheapest, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Can you give me some indication as to why we don't take, I understand that there's one tender that was put forward that was 109,000 cheaper. What is the weighting differentials in the decision to go for a more expensive?
Look, it varies with every tender we go for, but I guess we are interested in the quality of our contractors as well. So we don't want to just give these important jobs to any contractor who's going to come in and work on our water supply, which is very easy to contaminate, for instance. So we're really focused on ensuring that we get the right contractor that we can work with and manage. In this case, I believe price was weighted at 45% of the tender. We had 15%, which was the local attribute, and then the remaining, what does that leave, 30% or something or other, was a combination of relevant experience, key personnel, methodology, and probably one other, which I'm forgetting. But so all of those attributes are all assessed individually by a evaluation team. There's 4 in the team, and it's overseen by a procurement manager. That's all done before the prices are even opened, and it's agreed every different tenderer's scores. Following that, all the scores are agreed, the prices are sent through, they're opened, and a formula then determines who wins the tender. So there was one that was $104,000 cheaper. There was actually another one that was even subtly cheaper than that, but neither of those 2 tenderers actually came second in the process. There was actually a tenderer that was a higher price that came second.
Councillor Taylor.
So I guess just to echo what Councillor Guy said, given that we're being asked for an additional 185,000, I'm just seeking assurance at this table that the difference in the successful tenderer and those that weren't successful and obviously knocked out through the reasons you've given around quality of work and a whole range of other weighted attributes, that the value difference is going to be offset by the increased quality of the work. I mean, that's really, we're asking 185,000 additional work, but is it that we're going to pay that extra money, we're going to get that much extra value out of a cheaper tenderer? That's my first question. I've got one other as well.
Yeah, and look, I guess we literally won't know until we do the job and we work with this tenderer. But we make these decisions early on. We review each procurement. Where it's a simple procurement, a low risk procurement, we might go in as we're keen on a lowest price type project where literally price drives everything. In this case, and it's something that is quite interesting for these projects going forward. We've decided that 15% local attribute is important to us. That could mean that you pay far more in excess of $100,000 on a project like this. So I guess council needs to be aware of the impacts of a weighted attributes process. We use our experience to make a decision on what level of quality is important for us. We have been burnt in the past where projects have not gone well, and often we end up back in here asking for more money. The most recent one of those was the Taupo falling main, where we were back in, I think, asking for another $500,000. And I think that was I'm pretty sure that was the lowest price tender. But look, we won't know. We haven't worked personally with Chemex on a water main job yet, but their tender attributes were right up there. and they had a very good price to match that.
So through the chair, just to add to that if I can, the difference between lowest price conforming and the weighted attributes is the quality. And you know, this is the times that Dennis and I get all of the calls is around the quality. And so we're trying to just streamline that. It actually makes it go quicker, less pain for everyone involved, and they tend to be good at what they're doing because of those attributes. So this is, you know, just the way of us ensuring to give it the best chance of succeeding and having the less impact on us and our communities moving forward.
I get that, and I understand that you get what you pay for, and you know, if you use a motor vehicle analogy, it's either a BMW or a Lada, not wanting to offend Lada owners.
Skoda.
But no, they're actually quite good apparently.
Yeah, sorry.
My other question is, through the chair, in terms of feedback to the tenderers, and you know, obviously you made the comment earlier on around keeping these people interested in the market. I mean, obviously you get tenderers who are knocked back. Are we giving robust and timely feedback to them, so when they're missing out, they say, this is the reason why, if you want to be successful, you're going to have to either sharpen your pencil on the dollar or your quality or whatever. So I'm assuming, are we some assurance that that is happening in a robust sort of a way?
So that is, Councillor, that is part of the tendering process. At the completion of a tender, we offer to all of the tenderers the opportunity to debrief them on their tender submission and go through where we think they would be able to improve, whether there's more evidence in particular areas or they're showing weakness. What we don't do is look at other tenderers and provide advice to a tenderer on what other tenderers have done. So it's looking at that tender submission and how they might improve that.
Councillor Park.
Just one thing from me, because I sort of haven't seen something like this before in the few years that I've been here, but the project estimate was 2.3. However, you're asking for unbudgeted money, so I'm just wondering how you have an engineer's estimate that is nearly $1 million more than the money's allowed in the budget.
Yep, and that there was discussions had at the point that we got the engineer's estimate as to how we proceeded at that point, because we realised, hey, it looks like we're going to need more money here. And I think we decided at that point, look, we don't know that's what we're going to pay, so let's go to tender and see. And what's been found is that probably the original estimates we did around the LTP time last time were actually more accurate than our engineers were telling us. And so and there's a little bit in the paper about that, but the 5 Mile Bay portion of it was actually very accurate. It was the Taupo Ridge falling main, which is, I guess, a little bit unusual in that we haven't done a main like that in town that's in quite a, I guess it's effectively, you know, it's along a gravel path and it's a big main. And I think this was the reason that we had so many tenderers. They saw that and went, wow, this is a really easy job, really, you know, they can get in there with their big machinery and go nuts. You know, we had Hicks in there from Auckland who, you know, are doing multi-billion-dollar kind of development projects, and they're having a crack at it because they saw this big, easy main to deliver. So look, our WSPO engineers said, you know, they're a little bit embarrassed by this, and they've taken the feedback from this pricing and have put that back into their models to hopefully inform the future engineers' estimates for this type of work. But yeah, effectively, I suppose we got the engineer's estimate wrong.
Councillor Mack.
So just on the 5 Mile Bay one, I know with this pipeline we're supposed to give drinking water to everybody. Are we looking at this pipeline, and if we go out to submissions and people don't want to do it, is there a minimum that need to connect and we won't do, or are we going to do it whether they connect or not?
I believe we're not asking them whether or not the project goes ahead. We're asking them how it's to be paid for.
So that's the question, that we are going to go ahead whether they connect or not.
That's the intent, yes.
And so the second part to that is, with it being that important and a holiday destination, 14th of October, is that long enough to get submissions from these people?
Tanya's set.
So we're certainly conscious that 5 Mile Bay has a lot of holiday homes. So we will, the plan is to send out a letter to each of those ratepayers to make sure that they're aware of it, because it is really important that they do have their say, or have the opportunity to have their say on this. So yeah, we're certainly cognizant of that.
All right. Okay, thank you, Tom. The only other question I've got is when you list the tender as received, you've got Camex Taupo and you've got Waitahi Taupo. What actually constitutes a Taupo owned company? Because that's what these other tenderers are going to say to me. You know, you put this in the agenda. So we know they're local, they're set up here and all that sort of thing, but obviously when you send the cheque, you send it off to somewhere else.
Yep.
So how do we count it? You know, how do we answer that question?
So this was the local economic attribute that was, I would say, was enforced on us a few months ago, and the agreement that was made, which I believe was was discussed with yourselves, was that tenderer with their head office here would get 100%. So I think there was only one of those that made it through, and that was E&J's contractors. So they got 100% of the 15% available.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, so they got 15%. Any tenderer with a local office here got 50%, so got 7.5% of the 15%. And that proved very difficult for us to assess. To put it bluntly, we had a number of tenderers who said they had an office here, gave us addresses, all sorts of things. So that was a real challenge for us, and we're now reviewing that, so we don't have that challenge going forward. But effectively, the ones with Taupo next to them were the ones that ended up being assessed as having a local depot here, or a local office, so they were given 7.5% of the 15%. The remaining ones that were outside got 0%. And yeah, it's unfortunate for them, but none of them would have been anywhere near the running for the project. I would say there was no point any of them bidding. That's the impact of that 15% in that form, in that format. So that's what we'll review that and probably come back to you to talk about.
So you remember we've been having these conversations for as long as I've been in the chamber, and it's been around what constitutes local, and it's really difficult. You know, obviously a locally owned and operated company, so potentially on this list, E&J contractors are very obviously local because we all know them. They're here, they were established here, they started here, they employ local. But what else makes a local contractor? You know, we have other contractors who are national or even international based contractors, but they have a local yard here, they employ local staff, and so that's surely the important bit, is that they're employing local people. So clearly if it's looking at the list here, a Hamilton or Cambridge based firm, that they fly in and fly out, that's a different situation than if they're locally here. But what we've tried to do in terms of this 15% is recognise that if they are a national firm but they have a local presence, and therefore their yard is here and they have office staff and all that sort of stuff around it, then that puts them in a slightly different situation. But that was always going to be the difficulty of a loading like this, and why we've resisted it for a long period of time, and why frankly we've said that this is a temporary issue through COVID to try and get us through this hump in terms of the unusual situation that we're in. So you know, we always said it was going to be a temporary situation, and we'll be coming back to you in due course to remove that once we get past the unusual situation that we're in at the moment.
So through the chair, just to add to that, we will be doing some work because we've got a lot of tenders going out, and just how we administer that 15%. And having to look at those gaps across that, but that's operational, but it will still be a 15% weighting. So yes.
Yeah. So if you're purely locally owned and operated, and everything's done here, you get 15% preferential. If you're got a presence here in some formal way, you get 7.5%.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, I think we've talked about that enough. Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Dennis. A suggested recommendation there that we go with this, with the Taupo Ridge starting first, obviously, and then down to 5 Miles. So do I have a move, please? Moved by Councillor Kingi. Thank you, Councillor Truman. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Right, 4.10, Financial Delegation Chief Executive Officer for the Government Shovel-Ready Projects. Tina, good afternoon, Mr. Jakes.
Hello. Really just want to take the item as read. The main reason for this is, as you're aware, the financial delegation to the chief executive currently stands at 500,000, and in terms of the shovel-ready projects, there are constraints in terms of timelines to meet the government requirements. So with tenders coming in and waiting for council meetings and the delays that can happen, the suggestion here is that for those shovel-ready projects that there's no delegation in terms of that 500,000, and the chief executive can enter and commit to those specific contracts.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Tina. Sorry, what is the current delegation?
500.
This is what your... So your current delegate, you can sign off to up to 500 now?
So currently I have 500,000 if it's budgeted, so if it's in the long-term plan. This recommendation is saying that it's any amount if it's one of those that are the shovel-ready projects. So we've got obviously $39.5 million all up so far from the government in terms of those shovel-ready projects. Because of those time frames, then this is saying we have the ability to be able to enter into those contracts up to that total amount, but it won't be one contract obviously because there are a whole lot of different jobs. The next item in here provides me with the confidence, and should you with the confidence as well, in terms of the next item is for the town centre project, is the governance arrangements around that, which provides governance there. So whilst that committee doesn't have the formal decision making, this delegation will do that. Obviously, I'm not going to enter into any of the significant parts of that contract without having that governance group ticking off, and that's within the terms of reference of that group. So the two work hand in hand to make sure that one buffers the other one. I wouldn't be comfortable with this if it wasn't for having those governance arrangements around the awarding of the contracts.
Very good. Okay, Councillor Taylor.
Just as an additional safeguard for our chief executive, I just thought the wording of the recommendation is around contracts for the shovel-ready projects. I wonder if we should also include a line that limits it to the funding made available attached to those projects, so that if we get to a situation where we need to commit to a contract but the funding hasn't arrived yet, and for any reason things unravel and we've already committed money from other parts of the business, if ever we got into that position, just conscious, put another safeguard. And I hear what you're saying, and it's not a question of lack of trust, it's more of a question of safeguards. That we've got projects, but I wonder if we should tie that to the funding that is made available that attaches to those projects as well.
Happy with that. I think that makes sense. Councillor Mack?
And I suppose for the Turangi one with the 6.6 and most of it being on the curbways, and actually as councillors not knowing, and I don't think we do until we get the answers, we don't actually know which curbing is being done. So even though we may award, or you may award the job, I think we need to know what it is we're going to be actually doing.
So there's a difference between a financial delegation to be able to approve and the process that you take to get there. So I've explained obviously the Taupo Town Centre one having that group just because it's the next paper. But the Turangi ones, clearly when we know what that is and we don't yet, then the board will be used in that same place, the Turangi Community Board. So my expectation would be that we, either the full board or a committee of the board, whatever the board decides, would be there to be able to have the governance conversations around what happens and when within that contract. But the person who signs, once everybody's happy and I'm confident about that, or my staff have informed me that they're comfortable about that, then I'm the one that signs the paper rather than having to go to a separate council meeting a month after that.
Yep, Councillor Leonard.
I think that as a council and as council members elected, that we have a responsibility and accountability to those funds, and I think that 500,000 is enough, personally.
Cool. Any other comments? Councillor Body?
Jim, just very quickly in regards of what we've just been through with the previous tender, we had the explanation about 15% is local procurement, etc. I would probably think that if anyone tendered for any of the contracts we're talking about, the delegation of the CEO, that would be taken in regards of anyone trying to say, well, it's government money, let's see if we can milk it. So I'm a little bit between what Councillor Leonard said and the views of Councillor Taylor. I'm not quite sure what the answer is.
We've just got a suggested amendment up. Has it been up there? I'm just adding this now. Can we? Is that the sort of thing, Councillor Taylor, that you're looking, or tighten that up a bit more?
If I could, Your Worship.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of the time constraints we've got, and conversations we've had around this are that the money is made available, you need to get on with it, and that we can't go through our normal processes, and I get that, and I agree with that, and that's important. And I respectfully disagree with Councillor Leonard in terms of 500,000. I don't believe that will be enough for the projects, particularly when you're looking at $20+ million for the CBD upgrade. There are going to be contracts which need to be let, which are at a much higher financial value than that. But I'm just concerned that we have some safeguards in there for all of us and for Gareth of CE, that it speaks to not just the projects but the monetary value of those projects. So at the moment that recommendation talks about council expenditure. Well, yeah, that's fine, but the council expenditure is specifically the money allocated from central government for the shovel-ready project. It's quite a ring-fenced pool of money, and we need to be quite deliberate about the recommendation that it is ring-fenced. That's all I was getting at.
So, Councillor Taylor, would you suggest once received, or no? Yeah.
Yeah, just making it clear, it's that money. It's not going to come out of the general fund.
Correct.
It's not going to come out of ratepayers' money. This is the money we're allocated to do these things. That's what it should be tied to.
So can I suggest that the Chief Executive may enter into any contract relating, any contract funded through or funded by central government as part of the shovel-ready projects allocated to Taupo District.
Just for clarity, in the background of talk or the discussion talked about water reform as well, which might not be seen or classified as shovel ready. So just to make sure, should we also add in there then shovel ready and the water reform projects, just to be absolutely clear.
So
Still going to go.
say council grant, government grant.
I'm just trying to think, if you've got a tender, an urgent tender to sign off, and the government said, yeah, I'll give you the money next month,
That's fine, because you've got a contract sitting there with the government. So it's stuff that it's contracted with the government, isn't it? Is the issue.
yeah.
I suppose what Councillor Leonard's saying and Body as well is, though, even though that's the case, how do we know that that contract, because it's shovel ready, isn't inflated? Because it's just going to be signed off. What's the...
So it'll still go through its normal procurement process. So there'll be not this normal procurement, there will be a procurement process there, whether that's tenders, whether that's review panel. There'll be a public process that fits with our policy. So
Cool.
all of our other policies remain, and so the normal process remains. All we're talking about is whether it comes to this
Yep.
table to sign the thing like that last contract, or whether I do it as soon as it comes through.
Yep.
And
So
what
sorry-
I'm saying to you is that I'd never sign it off unless I knew that the governance group was happy with it anyway. So it's about that step of it coming around this table.
So through the chair, that there is a lot of procurement advice in the contract, and that we've seen and we're including into it. So there's a lot of security around there, and even though it's something we haven't done a lot of, some of the ways that we're wanting to spend the money, as in procurement wise, we're seeking independent advice from an Auckland consultant who's really good at this stuff as well. So we're trying to keep Gareth and everyone really, really safe.
The other commitment that I'd always make through this is that what we spend and what we do for it would be reported back through those groups and then up to council subsequently. So if you look at the terms of reference, which is the item which is coming up next, it's essentially put up as a monitoring group. So the contracts as awarded would obviously come up through that group and then up to council, so everybody's aware of it at the same time. And the same would apply for TTCB for the Turangi monies.
Thank you. I just think that possibly we should be looking at 4.11 first to give everyone the comfort that there is actually another layer of authority over this. And so I wonder whether that is possible, that we could move to 4.11.
Yeah, I'm on the same lines as Kathy. Actually, I was just thinking that resolution. We could be here crafting resolutions all day, but it's probably lacking the bit which is what is our involvement. So it acknowledges the role of our chief executive around the funding, but it doesn't have anything in there about the function of a council in terms of that process. And because I guess I'm picking up on the vibe from some of my cohorts here that might be lacking as far as the community's transparency or trust in us performing our function.
Just through the chair, I was just going to say I agree with Councillor Guy completely. It is in the terms of reference for the working party that they do monitor the expenditure, so it seems logical.
So just a question on that process then. Do they pay that in as a lump sum? And because that's what I'm worried about, is that some of these contractors will be expecting to be paid on the 20th or whatever, and what if the money is delayed and there's a lag, and then this may compromise that?
No, so each of the projects will have a contract. Does have a contract with the government. So we're just currently negotiating one for the town centre. That will have key milestones of payments. So it's not at the minutiae detail of $1 million contract for a $21 million job. It's at it will be at certain key milestones. So for the $21 million town centre job, it might be 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever we get to times that we'll get a drawdown from the government, and then we have our procurement process. So it's when you get to a certain time or a certain action having been completed, then we get the money in, and then we go forward from there. So we're doing the same thing with the airport at the moment. It was a really good example. We had a payment on signing, and then we have I think is it 2, Philip? Must be 2 extra payments, I think, for the airport as we go through. So once we get to detailed design, I think it is, we get another payment, and then when we get to awarding tender, we get another payment.
Just on that point, I'm getting a little bit confused. The money is central government's, so the central government okay the contract before they sign it off? How does that work?
So the contract is between Taupo District Council and the Crown. So for the payment of the works, then we have a contract with the contractors, and so we manage what the work is going to be within the bounds of our contract with the central government and the procurement of the contractors, etc.
So effectively, Mr. Chairman, we shouldn't be worried about what we're actually discussing, because it's going to be approved by central government and then goes to us to pay to the contractor. So I can't see us being ripped off.
So central government won't be I'm not disagreeing with you. Central government won't be approving the individual contract. So they won't be approving a contract to XYZ contractors. They're approving they've already approved the project for $21 million, and then they'll do tranches of payments from there.
Fully understand.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll park that just at the moment and go to the next item on the agenda, which is the establishment of the Taupo Town Centre Transformation Project Working Party, 151. And Tina, I don't know if you've got anything to add, but we
Previous stated, it does link in with the previous item, so
yeah,
just need to have the members appointed, and whether you wanted 5 or a lesser or more amount.
Yeah.
So that's your decision is.
We did workshop this a little bit earlier, and I do have some names here of councillors that are interested. So I'll put that to the committee. Councillor Westerman, Councillor Park, Councillor Taylor, and Councillor Williamson. So 4 there. I think 4 is a good workable number. 5 just seems a bit top heavy. Are those councillors still okay to do that? And whether there's any other commentary around that?
Mr. Chairman, just in
Yep,
the terms of reference, perhaps just amend the quorum from, I think it's currently 4, and amend it down to 3.
3.
So the membership will change to 4 and the quorum to 3.
Quorum of 3, yep. Very good. Shane, you all right? Cool. Okay, thank you for that. I don't think there's any other question there. Councillor Kingy? Yep.
Thank you, Bishop. Just in regards to this, just a question. Is there an opportunity to have iwi hapu involvement in this discussion, or what does that look like in terms of this overall project?
Yeah, so Kevin, do you want to, probably best placed to?
So through the chair, we are working through that with Philip and what he's doing in that team, and we having discussions with Dylan and his team about who is best to advise us on the cultural components of the town centre upgrade. So forefront of mind, and we're just working our way through how we're going to deal with it.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Kingy. Mr. Strongman? Okay. There's recommendation there. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Truman, seconded by Councillor Mack. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, go back to 4.10, where we'd worked up a new resolution, and obviously in the terms of reference of that working party, obviously there's some considerations there that we think will cover those, well, I generally think we'll cover those previous questions about that. So, Councillor Taylor.
Respectfully, no. We've made a decision, we've appointed a subgroup, but it's not mentioned in that recommendation, so it's actually of no effect at all unless we put something in there about the Town Centre Transformation Project Governance subgroup, then nothing's changed.
That in there.
The recommendation stays the same as it was before.
Yeah, yeah. So you're wanting a new
No, what I'm saying is, having just dealt with item 4.11 is great, but in terms of that recommendation, 4.11 is not mentioned in that recommendation at all.
So, yeah.
Through the chair, it mentions in the discussion, but not the recommendations.
So it's not mentioned in there because, of course, this isn't just the town centre project, it's also the waters project and those other, the Turangi and the other money for Taupo. So it's the shovel ready, so it's going back through to that. I guess what you do have in 4.11 is the terms of reference, which include the monitoring of the budgets and the financial considerations. So that's as a standalone piece in the 4.11. That's the function of now you as that group, and so again, all we're talking about here is for the ability for myself to be able to sign off those contracts once it's been through a procurement process, with that group's terms of reference being that you are monitoring and in charge of the financial elements. So it's giving the ability to sign the form, not the decision about whether or not you're in or not.
So through the chair, yeah, I understand all that. I'm just trying to work through the logic of my own mind of why we changed the order, because to my mind it actually has made no difference. That's all.
I guess what it does is it's got the confidence now that has passed, and so there is that governance oversight over what is signed.
And your new role will be, one of them, will be to the level of financial consequences of the proposal of the decision. So the 4 councillors that thank you very much appreciate accepting the position, but it will be one of your monitoring functions. So Councillor Mack.
So I think just with Councillor Taylor, I think what we're trying to say is, or he's trying to say, is that somewhere in there it's got to say including the working groups. Because as you say, no, what I'm saying is like, we're going to have a Turangi one for this, and no, we don't, and you've got the Taupo Town Centre, and that's where the money's coming from once we've all discussed it. So somewhere in there, does it have to say something along those lines? Because as you say, what was the point of doing 4.11?
So I guess the challenge is that we don't know what those other groups look like yet, because that'll be up to the board to decide what structure they want to put around those projects. Again, 4.11 was about giving the confidence that you've got a committee there with the terms of reference that they are now, those 4 councillors are now responsible for those financial monitoring and making sure that things are going well. So this is simply just to be able to sign the form. So that the function sits with the governance group. This is about giving someone the ability to sign the form.
Councillor Taylor?
Right, thank you. That provides me with some clarity. If we are then have governance responsibility financially, then we need something in there very clearly, in my view, and it would be around as discussed or communicated with the relevant governance subgroups. So that doesn't rule out whatever will be put in place for Turangi, whatever will be put in place for the Three Waters and whatever. So it's not exclusive to the town centre, but it needs to be some reflection of that.
So maybe Shani a note at the end of that resolution saying
each project.
That, in exercising the delegation, the relevant committees will be some words to that effect.
Involved. Involved, not involved, participate, no.
We know what we're trying to say.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Well,
what we don't want to do here is perversely go the other way. I know that at the moment I've got the delegation for $500,000. The way that you're writing that is every dollar that we spend I have to come back to that group, which would actually slow us down and be perverse. So we don't want to, the intent of this is to try and enable it to go fast with still having those safety guards.
Through the chair, it's not a point of being pedantic. I think it's important because the only thing that will be read 6 months from now is what we've actually voted on, not the discussion we're having now. So we need to get the words right, because that's what we'll refer back to.
Overseeing's not a bad word. Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah.
Overseeing's a good word. That's control without approval. So
That's good. Councillor Body?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, the wording's good, but overseen by how often?
Turpin's reference of the governance group. Yeah.
It might be different for the Turangi one. They might want to do it weekly. I don't know.
We've got some resignations of the governance group already. Okay, Shani, well done. Thank you very much. Yeah, perfect. Very well. We think it's perfect anyway.
Through the chair,
Yes.
I think I was pretty happy with the way it was. So I think it's pretty much governance by paralysis a wee bit, but it's just my personal view.
Yeah. I think overseen means that, it's just been, because there's some heavy decisions that this group's got to make, and some heavy prices come with them. But if we muck around, as well, to central government, something else will happen, and you never know what can happen down the track. So, you've got to get on and get these jobs and get these jobs done. I mean,
Mr.
so
Mayor,
I think we're covered there.
yeah, I was just going to say, I think the important fact though is our community need to feel as though we are still part of that process. So if we are still accountable, even though it's government money, they still have that expectation on us to manage, and so therefore we're still part of the cog. So I still see that we absolutely have a role in there. It's just obviously how do we allow our chief executive to keep doing it, but making sure that we're fulfilling our function of
Yep.
serving the interests.
Yeah. Okay, 1 and 2 is it, or just? Will that be just part of the resolution? Yeah, two parts. Yeah. Cool. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Tina. There's a suggested recommendation up there. Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Rankin. Seconder, please. Councillor Westerman. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Councillor Leonard, would you like that recorded? Yeah, cool. Thanks, Councillor Leonard. All right, 4.12, I believe. Is that right?
So just
Council engagements,
our
yep.
engagements for September, and just like to add another one on the 22nd, which is the TL Community Fund to pop in there.
Okay. What date was that, sorry?
22nd.
Of September.
Yep.
Any other ones to add or subtract? No? Yep. Cool. All right. Can I have a mover, please? Thanks, Councillor Park. Second, Councillor Truman. All those in favour, please say aye. It's against. Carried. 4.13, members' reports. Councillor Body, you got any reports? Okay. Councillor Guy?
Just meeting with the EGLT chair tomorrow morning,
Yes.
which will be our monthly meeting.
Okay. Oh, thank you. With your economic portfolio. Thank you. Councillor Kingy? Councillor Leonard? Councillor Mack? Councillor Rankin? Councillor Westman, Truman, Taylor, Park, and John Williamson. Okay, all right. That's it for the public part of the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Truly appreciated. You're happy to move into confidence? Been moved by Councillor Park, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favour, please say aye. It's against. Carried.